think there's that word as well, resolution. You kind of resolve something when the poem is complete, and it stands by itself. So it's something about creating from the whole moment, really. If you think of just that instant moment, which is not just you sitting at a desk writing, but everything around you, the whole world, the universe, space, that moment won't be the same again. Anyways, so that's sort of, sometimes it's that sort of spiritual type connection which I value.
This is People and Their Poems, a podcast about the poems that make a difference in our world. People and Their Poems is presented by Ornog Mountain Publishing. Thanks for joining us today.
Welcome to People and Their Poems podcast. I am your host, Sandy Carlson, and I'm here today with Steve Walter, a poet in Tunbridge Wells in Kent, England, and we're going to talk about his recent collection of poetry called A Lighter Metal, as well as his inspiration and his thoughts on the craft of poetry. Steve's background is actually in chemistry. His dad was a writer and his mom was an artist, so the blending of art and science come naturally to Steve. Welcome, Steve. Thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. I think your collection is just wonderful. Would you tell us a little bit about your inspiration? What brought you to poetry? Especially interested, were you writing poetry while you were working as a scientist, basically, or?
Yes, I started writing really as a young teenager, because being in that environment with my dad being a poet, it was sort of in the house. Mm-hmm. And when I first discovered that you didn't actually have to rhyme, that was the kind of freedom was. I thought, I can just write anything, and I wrote through my teenage years, and then into being a student. And I had, funnily enough, I had a large A4 lever arch folder with about 160 poems in it, and I'd asked a poet friend whether she'd be willing to have a look at some of my poems. Didn't tell her how many there were. I posted this folder to her, and to give her credit, she actually did read them and made comments on a number of them. But so I used to write, and I wrote while I was at university. And my first poem published was in the Literary Review back in 1984, so it was some time ago.
Could I ask the poet friend who read your 160 poems, what motivated you to share them with her and to get some feedback?
Well, I kind of wanted to get some feedback, and rather than just asking my dad, I mean, he made a few comments. He's mostly very sort of accepting and like them. But I'd seen her read in London in the Poetry Society, and we were travelling back on the train, so it was a good excuse to ask the question, really. And she was very kind enough to take it up. But I think that in terms of like what kind of prompts me or inspires me to write, I was thinking that it can be absolutely anything about life, coincidence, synchronicity, chance, nature, the planet, relationships, love, anything really. And but I think it's really when you think of an idea, or you make certain observation, some particular detail, and then bring that together with something else. So you get two or three concepts sort of weaving through a poem. I think that's what makes it interesting.
Well, your love for your family, your concern for the planet, and your interest in knowledge of science and lighter metal come through in this collection. Would you share some of your poems from that collection with us?
Yes, certainly. Yeah, I'd be happy to. I thought I'd read the very first one as well, which is called Vincent, 1890, and it's about Vincent van Gogh, as we say in England. And then a couple of other ones, and then one more recent one as well. Vincent, 1890. Art is long, life is short. You open your heart to cypresses as you enter the grounds of St. Paul at Saint Remy, catch the blaze of a wheat field with crows. I never knew such colour could hold so many words. Every stroke of your paintbrush connects you with artists in my family, living and dead. If we were to meet, would we share a bottle of wine together, talk yellow, yellow and blue and red? Might we discuss composition, the spirit of light? Would I put my arm around you as we go back inside, exchange anecdotes, talk mental health? You are here of your own free will. I was sectioned. And then it hits you like a fracture in a pane of glass, all the grief that ever was, expressed through this one old man. And I thought, in place of silence, which goes back to the summer of '97, when I experienced my first breakdown. And that's where the lighter metal for the title comes from, lithium, which is always given as a form of medication to help out with bipolar disorder, as it happens. And I wrote this in the summer afterwards. In place of silence, if I were to try to explain how it happened, it would have to do with high tension, high voltage, breaking the taut line between what is real and what is imagined. It has to do with boundaries between body and soul and spirit. It is about aspiration, longing for love, longing to have her, the indefinite beauty who defines a craving heart, the woman within, the muse, playing dice with angels. And there is always the pain, the slow pain of forgetting, hidden among the shadows of the haunting past. Whatever happened belongs to the space between the page and the written word. It is better unheard, because it fails when it reaches the vibrations of air, the twisted membranes of the pharynx, the moment which is live between the mouth and the microphone, between the speaker and the eardrum, is best held close, except silence destroys from within. And in that same summer, we went to Pembrokeshire in Wales, South Wales, and there's an island which is an uninhabited island now. It's called Skoma. And the guttering red rock, sliced like decks of cards, slanted into the sea. And she is there in the mist, in the sea breeze. She is in the gathering dark. She rides the mounting forces which rise beneath the blackening waves, and she is in the quilted sky. She is there in the billowing sheeted veils of the afternoon, and in the rakish cry of the gulls screaming over the graves of shearwater skeletons. She is at the exits of hollowed burrows, among bits of dead bird, dead rabbit, scattered beside the remains of Iron Age homesteads, and she is marking the way in Celtic stone against the unforgiving grey. And to come up to a bit more present, is a poem which involves both my dad and my uncle, called The Ghost in the Machine, which, as you may know, is from the book by Arthur Koestler, written in the 60s, about spirit in the body, really. It was as if Dad knew him, Koestler, tugged from the glass-panelled mahogany bookcase in the front room where time would still, freeze, become more than real. AI might breathe here, learn from these pages, syntax, how to connect arts and sciences. His brother-in-law, my uncle, 93, explains the operation and handling of the Zimmer frame in similar terms to the motorbikes he rode as a teenager, scrambling over Canada Heights. Now, the corridor, the lift, the uneven pavement, crossing the road to the island. But there we are. There's a sample of four poems.
Thank you, Steve. It's quite a journey. I've heard you read Vincent before, and the thing that strikes me about that poem is how you sweep the reader right into the poem with you. With that second person, you open your heart to cypresses as you enter the ground. So there's immediate connection for me as a reader or a listener to the experiences you're describing. And then you take it so deep inside the emotional experiences of being in that art and leave us wondering what it was to create it.
That's great. It's lovely to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's,
And for people who have your book or get your book, when they see that placed alongside In Place of Silence, there's it takes you to the same place, and there's the experience of the writer and that experience of emotional struggles, emotional journeys, and the phrasing, whatever happened belongs to the space between the page and the written word. It just blows me away, because to think about what that space is, is sometimes I think when I read this, it's we can know ourselves, we can know each other to a point, and we can say it, but we can't say all of it. And there are things yet to discover in life and in experience.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. And it's one that somebody sometimes stay with you for longer, don't they? And that's been with me and in my heart for a long time. And I think being able to articulate what you mean, what you feel, and communicate, that's kind of underpins the whole of the poem, really. And as you say, is that communication also with Vincent, and that connection with him as an artist, as a person, as a man, and back in the time when he was in the asylum. Yeah.
Yeah, I was Ed and I were at a poetry event last night, and Chief the poet, he's a poet laureate of the town of New Britain here in Connecticut, and
Oh, right.
he's a spoken word poet, and he was saying a lot of what you're saying from a different perspective and from a different part of the world. That so many of the struggles that he faced, he found his way out of with his pen in his hand.
Right. Yeah.
And it really, reading your work makes me very aware of what a deeply personal gift poetry is.
Right.
Even public poetry, an occasional poetry and the things that poet laureates create for communities, they really need to dig deep on what it means to be who they are and where they are, and what it means for others to be there. So the power of that to create a sense of connection is not to be underestimated. And on a very personal note, your poem about lithium made me
Oh, right. Yeah.
feel again in my heart a dear friend of mine who coped with mental illness and ultimately took his life in 2001, and he struggled with the medications and where the medication took him. And there were things he could share and things he couldn't share. So your poetry's had a sort of a healing power for me in terms of helping me understand and feel on a more personal level things that he couldn't explain those years ago.
Well, yeah, I'm very sorry to hear about your loss there. And it's and I love the cover that you chose as well, the rock, imagining it to be lithium ore, and I think that's it's a really nice touch as well.
And I'm not a scientist by any stretch at all. But to think, how did somebody figure out how doing something with this mineral could help people struggling with psychological problems?
Yeah. And they don't really understand, as I say in that poem, they don't really understand how it works. The actual mechanism, how it has an effect, and because it's not something that occurs naturally in the body.
Right. Would you mind reading Lithium as well, since we're kind of on that?
Sure, yeah, okay. Dear Lithium, remember how we met beneath that millennium sky? I was set on edge for you. The lightest metal, catching fire on water, You burned through me with a crimson flame, your salt prescribed for a troubled life. Our routine, tablets, nocta, bloods each quarter, to check electrolyte equivalents, thyroid, kidneys, liver. Exactly how you work, nobody knows. You batten down the highs, hammer out the lows.
Yeah, it just gives me pause, and this the sort of the balance that gets achieved in the rhyme you have at the end just kind of speak to each other. Could you talk a little bit about your what you learned or discovered in the process of writing poetry? And I know you've written poetry out of concern for the planet, and you've had public readings and shared your work on these topics. Would you mind just talking a little bit about what that has meant to you as a writer, a poet, and a scientist over the years?
Yeah, I'd always say it's like I feel as if it's like the core of me, that's like the most fundamental part of me. It's that we come to that word again, connection, in connecting with the moment, and it's kind of like a mindful experience, considering, dwelling, contemplating, reflecting on something, which then becomes attached to it becomes attached to create a poem, becomes alive really, and has a life of its own, as in any writing really, it comes back to life. So yeah, and with the actual collection as well, I just it's been a while in the making, and as you know, some poems have been published before, but they've never sat together like this. They've all, and it's just bringing a collection together. They sort of play off each other, I think, and that's something that I like about it. And yeah, I think there's that word as well, resolution. You kind of resolve something when the poem is complete, and it stands by itself. So it's something about creating from the whole moment really. If you think of, if you think of just that instant moment, which is not just you sitting at a desk writing, but everything around you, the whole of the world, the universe, space. It won't be that moment. It won't be the same again. Always. So that's sort of, sometimes it's that sort of spiritual type of connection which I value.
Yeah, it's a beautiful collection, and your dedication to your mom and dad, and the personal experiences you describe, and the breadth in this volume is very lovely. And it's funny. I seldom take a poetry book out of the library. I like to buy them because I want to have access to it when that poet can speak to me, and you just kind of know who your poets are, and to be able to take a book off the shelf and go sit with it and sit with the words and the experiences and the journey that's contained between the covers is a very, very nice thing. And that experience of your poems is just really exciting. And for me, my own growth as a reader was the scientific aspect of some of your poems. If I were going to go pick a poet to read and there was a science element to them, I would go past that one. I would think, it's beyond me. But I had to stretch and think, and because they're so well done, it's easy to find your way in, and it's very nice to go to the places that your poem took me as a reader, and to realize that science can speak to me too. I had sort of typecast myself as somebody who was unavailable to it, and you changed my perspective. So that was my experience of your book, and it was a really wonderful learning experience for me. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Oh, it reminds me of the one of the poems which was when my son was about, I suppose he must have been about 8, 9 years old, and he asked the question, "Can light become a liquid?" And I thought, can it become a liquid? And just to discover that it can at absolute zero, where everything else is frozen. It was, that was just kind of one of those moments that thought, wow, it's just amazing. Just came up with that thought.
Yeah, that's just the question and the answer are a poem. It's really wonderful.
Right, yeah.
Steve, do you have any recommendations or suggestions for people who may have been writing or thinking about writing and collecting their work and finding an audience the way you did with the poet on the train? Have you got some insights you would offer or recommendations?
Well, I was thinking about this, and I think when you're starting out, I think it is to be true to yourself and to be brave and to speak and to learn to find your own voice. That's one part of it, and I think also to be able to share your poems with first with close friends that you trust, to get their feedback and their sort of insight, their comments, because they may well identify and see improvements that you haven't noticed, you haven't realised. So I think that's invaluable, really. And so workshops are a really good thing to do to sort of stretch yourself and to write and to get other people's feedback when you're that bit more confident. So so that would be my first part of exercise. And when I say about being brave, I think that's when you're reading in public is when people do that and done it for the first time. One of our local spoken word groups is a lot of people come and it's the first time that they've ever read, and that they get a tremendous sort of energy and joy out of the fact that everybody gets like a warm response and support, and it's it can mean a lot, and psychologically it can mean a lot to actually work through and to be able to deliver something like that. So I think that's an important part of it. And then also, as we've been mentioning, is about being mindful and sort of connecting with the moment.
I'm reminded of a conversation I had with a friend yesterday. She and I were hiking by a very beautiful lake in a nearby town, and she's approaching 80, and her thing is that certain things that would once upon a time have seemed like luxuries, getting a massage, going to the chiropractor, whatever, are medical necessities or personal necessities, because taking care of your life and taking care of the body that moves you from room to room is a very important part of being alive. And I think what you're saying about taking the time to pay attention to the moment and giving yourself the opportunity to have an audience, and to grow through those experiences speaks to the same thing, where my friend was talking on a physical, biological level, on the internal level. It's really the same. And I've hosted a lot of open mics and attended many, and it's really an amazing and wonderful experience. Like you say, people are warmly received and honored for their bravery, which I think is such a big word here.
Yeah.
You're vulnerable when you're putting it out there, and people share things that are important to them, and with strangers, and that we live in a world where people create those opportunities for the people around them is pretty special.
It's so, I guess the word valuable comes to mind as well. It's a valuable and valued experience, isn't it? And those people that, well, as I say, the people have been the first time they've read, is actually they've really found something very rewarding.
Right, and I think finding an open mic and going there and reading. Your other advice was to find people who will workshop your poems with you. It's another way to find those workshops, because very often the poets who are reading at these open mics are often involved in writing groups, or the public library in your town can help connect you with a writing group that's only too happy to have more people come in and share their work. It's a great opportunity to feel that you are valuable as a human being, and I really appreciate the effort and the lifetime of writing that led you to a lighter metal. And I hope there'll be another collection, because I think your poetry is really very strong, very powerful, very brave, and infused with a love of life and whatever moment you're observing. So I'm really grateful to you for your work and for joining me on the podcast today, Steve.
Well, thank you, Sandy. It's been a delight, really, and really appreciate all your comments and the warmth and support that you give and clearly give to all of the groups as well. It's great. Thank you very much, and thank you for producing it.
This has been People and Their Poems, presented by Oronog Mountain Publishing. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to check the show notes for more information about this episode. Visit oronogmountainpublishing.com for more information about our services and writing opportunities. And visit peopleandtheirpoems.net to learn more about the podcast.